This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now.
Well, good morning and happy snow day to everybody in the eastern portion of the island anyway. We've got a full-on winter storm happening in the metro region, and Dave and I were chauffeured in this morning so that we can join you here today and take your calls. So if you're home and listening and wondering what to do before you head out and tackle the driveway, why don't you pick up the line and give us a call. Credit where credit's due, however, I have noticed that the city is doing what appears to be a pretty good job of keeping the main routes open anyway. Even so, officials are recommending that people stay off the roads just to keep them clear. And for people who need to get into work, those in healthcare, emergency services, essential services, radio, then people can get in safely. You don't want to be clogging up the roads if you get stuck or slip around or whatever the case may be. And we're going to keep you up to date on everything that's going on throughout the day. This is not it, by the way. This snow is going to continue for the next, 5 days? Something like that. Anyway, there's a certain point in the weather forecast where you sort of start to lose interest because you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to keep on top of all of this? But that's all right. We'll be fine. Everybody and everything's going to be just fine. Listen, this time last year we were saying, where is the snow? Well, we got it. We got last year's snow and this year's snow combined. So there you go. In other matters, politically speaking, let's turn to politics for a moment, shall we? Premier Tony Wakeham says a special advisor's salary that is being collected by Dr. Des Whalen is in line with agreements in place with the NLMA, Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association. Dr. Whalen's $275,000 salary is for $28 a week, and it's being paid through MCP. That's in addition to another $13,000 bonus, according to the opposition. The Premier says that's in line with what doctors are paid. It comes from a pot of money and through a pay scale set by the NLM. But that's not the point, says the opposition. This is a political appointment, and it's to be paid and it's being paid through MCP, which is money that's typically paid to physicians or to cover our healthcare expenses. Is that appropriate? Is something being circumvented here? Is there protocols? That's a very high salary within the Premier's office. If you have thoughts on that, you're certainly welcome to give us a call. I heard Premier Tony Wakeham speaking with VOCM's Richard Duggan and other reporters in a news conference yesterday, and he indicated that they're being transparent with this. However, the revelation, if you recall, was made through an ATIP request. And that ATIP result was then forwarded to media, including VOCM News. So that's how that was revealed. In the meantime, it's budget time for provinces right across Canada. And arguably, the punitive measures that U.S. President Donald Trump are starting to be felt across the country. The British Columbia government just tabled its budget, projecting an astounding and record-breaking deficit of $9.6 billion. That's forecast to rise to $13.3 billion by next year, and that's despite the BC government's increased taxes and cuts to the public service. The BC government is pointing the finger directly at Donald Trump and his tariffs as the reason why. BC Finance Minister Brenda Bailey says that they must assume this pressure is on our revenue and operate accordingly, is how they're going to be operating from here on in. But how long can government operate that far in the red? BC can't be unique, of course. Finance Minister Craig Party has already indicated that the provincial deficit has hit $1 billion. Ontario had promised a balanced budget by next year, but it says now that it's not on track to do so. And Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, Alberta being one of the country's richest provinces, has signaled that significant deficits are expected in that province. So the force and might of Donald Trump and his economic policy is arguably starting to be felt across Canada on a provincial level. And how that's going to impact our provincial budget remains to be seen because, of course, we're a resource-based economy here in Newfoundland and Labrador. A lot of what we produce gets sent south of the border. And, of course, we know now that there are issues with that and a cost to be paid. So if you have any thoughts on that, you're certainly welcome to give us a call. Meanwhile, the Premier is being urged to make it clear that his government will reject any move to increase salaries of elected officials before the House of Assembly sits on March the 2nd. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation wants Mr. Wakeham to say right now, is he willing to reject a recommendation made by the Members' Compensation Review Committee back in 2024 that MHA base salaries increase from just over $95,000 to $120,000 annually. Devin Drover says this is at a time when the median income in Newfoundland and Labrador is less than $33,000 and people are struggling. So he says this is the right move to make. Just say that the MHAs are not going to get their base salary increase this year before you sit in the House of Assembly. If you have any thoughts on that, you're welcome to give us a call. Lots more to talk about. There's a number of things I wanted to touch on, but we have a number of calls already waiting in the wings. So we'll start the show this morning going straight to RCMP Corporal Dave Borden, who's out on the roads. Hello, Dave.
Hello there.
How are you?
Oh, busy.
Yes, so
we have some terrible driving conditions right now.
Yeah, so you're out around on the road. You're getting around, are you?
Oh, yes, I'm getting around barely. I do have a good four-wheel drive vehicle, but we have a lot of stranded motorists on the Trans-Canada Highway, even as we speak. The Department of Transportation just made the decision to close the Witless Bay line till further notice, so that will hopefully keep a few people out of trouble.
For sure. The Witless Bay line, always problematic, of course. I don't need to tell you that. Is it very windy? Like, what can you see? Is it visibility the issue? Is it accumulation? What is it?
It is both. We still have snow falling, so it's certainly accumulating, and we do have a lot of blowing snow. So the plows are going through, and then 10 minutes later, it's like a foot or two of snow again. They just, they can't keep up with it, obviously.
You say you've already dealt with a number of stranded motorists. What typically happens? Like, do people get stuck in the middle of the road? Do they get stuck off the road? Like, how does that work, and how do you get them out of that predicament?
Yeah, so during the whiteout, you lose all sense of, direction and where the shoulder is and whatnot. So the first one that I dealt with early around 7 o'clock this morning, it was just, they were right in the middle of the road, right in between the two lanes of the divided highway there, westbound, and the plows came and we managed to get that person out. But yeah, other people have gone in the actual ditch or close to it. But anyway, that's the situation we're in.
And that's problematic if the plows are coming through, because if you couldn't see, the plow probably can't see you.
Yes, exactly right.
So are many people venturing out?
We have a number of people, some that are, getting off work, others that are headed to work. As I mentioned to Russell there earlier this morning, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that do have to commute, not just fire and emergency services or healthcare workers, but even, people that keep the gas stations running for us and so on and so forth, just so that, that support us.
Well, Dave, stay safe out there. Any updates that you want to provide, you know the number to call. You're welcome to come on.
Take care. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. And Dave Corporal Dave Borden out there on the highways today. That's his job to do so. If you don't need to be anywhere or go anywhere, stay put and stay safe. We're going to go now to Pierre. You're on the air. Hello, Pierre.
Yes, good morning, Linda. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I'm trotting along. I'm a senior here in Conception Bay South, and I'd like to raise a few issues about eye health this morning.
Okay.
Back in the fall in September, I had a cataract surgery. A lot of people go through cataract surgery now, and on one of my eyes, and it didn't go well. My eye didn't want to heal, and I only found out later in December that I have a disease called Fuchs dystrophy. It's a bit technical now, but this is a disease of the cornea, and it makes it so it won't heal after surgery. And my prognosis now is to get a partial cornea transplant. And this is my reason for calling this morning, is to put the issue on the front burner as far as the lack of an eye bank in Newfoundland and Labrador. Most provinces have an eye bank where donors, organ donors who are willing to give their usable organs after death, if there's an eye bank, then the eyes are able to be harvested. But if there isn't one, then they just don't harvest the eyes. They do the livers and the heart and those things, and so the eyes are not harvested, and so there's no bank to pull from to harvest cornea tissue that this cornea surgeons need to make the transplants. So it gets a bit complex because it's a fairly delicate surgery. And there is a cornea surgeon that comes in to St. John's every 2 months, and she's able to scrape a few tissues of cornea from either Ontario or some that are in Newfoundland by accident, and she's able to do a few things. But the waiting list to get the job done or to get the transplants done is a couple years long. And in the meantime, your vision could deteriorate, and you maybe not be able to drive, or the different aspects of losing your vision, are serious. And these cornea saving surgeries are really a new thing in eye care, but they can certainly give your eyes a better outlook and a very a little bit light at the end of the tunnel, as I say.
So to speak, yeah. So how is this affecting your life right now? What kind of a wait do you have for a corneal implant?
Well, I need a partial corneal transplant, and I was in to see the cornea surgeon yesterday, and she told me, she put me as urgent because of I have a heart condition as well, and my health is not the best, and I don't really want to travel out of province, which could be very costly, because you get it done out of province, but you have to pay your lodgings. TP doesn't cover that, and I'm probably going to get done within a year because I'm on the urgent list, but it's not guaranteed. And if we had an eye bank, we would have more tissue, and cornea surgeons would come into St. John's more often because the tissues were there, and then the waiting list would be a lot shorter.
Well, thank goodness for the doctor that comes up from Ontario every couple of months to do this.
She comes in every couple of months, and she's doing a very good duty, and she'd like to have more opportunities to come. And if the province had its own supply of cornea tissue, then it would be a lot easier for her to do that. And so it's the other thing that people might not know is that cornea or eyes are not matched. So anybody can donate a cornea or a part of your eye to another person. There's no tissue type matching and blood type matching or anything like that kind of stuff. So it makes it a lot, any kind of a tissue that you can get from any willing donor, as people sign their donor card, they're willing to give their organs after death. But again, in Newfoundland and Labrador, the eyes are not taken because they have no place to put them.
That's shocking to me. It seems like such a phenomenal waste when there are people waiting.
Yeah, there's people waiting on that list at least a couple of years for most cases, and it's not easy. And there's as the population ages, the eyes have diseases that affect it. I was diagnosed with what's called Fuchs dystrophy, as I said, and it's a progressive disease that eventually renders my eye blind. And, it takes a long time, but nevertheless, if you're waiting for surgery, it might get worse, right? And that's another reason to get this supply of corneal tissue so that everything can get done locally and people don't have to travel out of province and have, because the procedure itself involves you lay on your back for 2 days because they put an air bubble in your eye to put pressure on the patch that they put on your cornea, and then you have another 2 weeks of follow-up appointments to make sure everything is in place and that it heals properly. So you don't want to be traveling through all that. You want to be home and feel that you have your loved ones around you to help you out in this kind of a should I say recovery, right?
Yeah, I've known some people who've gone through that kind of thing, and yeah, it's you don't want to be in a hotel room like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want to be on your couch or in your bed, and have your family around you and the cat at your feet and all that stuff. So, what is your current situation? Do you have eyesight now?
Yes, I could see it. Yes, ever since my cataract surgery, and normally after cataract surgery it takes 2 or 3 days, and your vision gets clear. Well, my left eye that was done because of this disease I have, it won't clear up, and it's just a blurry vision. It's not like blindness. It's just like seeing through a dirty windshield, let's say. It's always fuzzy, blurry,
Yeah. But I mean, it would prevent you, I would imagine, from driving.
Well, yes, it prevent me from driving at night. Anyhow, I may be able to see well enough to drive in the day, but in roads that I'm familiar with, I wouldn't want to go on a trip.
No, indeed. So, what is your current situation? You say you're on the emergency wait list. You're hoping to get this done within
a year, I think. I'm seeing my surgeon in 6 months, and she said that she might have some news for me then. And hopefully, that I'm able to get on the priority list because of my other health concerns and just the fact that I've been with this condition now already 5 months since my cataract surgery. And so, it all takes a lot of time.
Well, like a lot of things, Pierre, you don't know until you know, right? And
right, yeah.
The fact that you've raised this issue is, pardon the pun, eye-opening, that we don't have an eye bank here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I mean, I should know this because I've spoken to the doctor that you were talking about, this eye doctor from Ontario, who comes up here frequently to do cataract surgeries and corneal implants and the like. She's a wonderful woman. She has connections here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I believe she has some family in the Goulds. But until you say it, somebody who signs an organ donor card and, is making this donation when they die, that the corneas are being, for want of a better word, wasted.
Yeah, it's like that, and myself, I've been putting my life a little bit on hold. I'm a cello player playing the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra, and I haven't been able to participate in any of the concerts this year because my poor vision, and I wouldn't drive to rehearsals in the evening because it'd be dark, and I have trouble reading the music anyhow.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a big blow. If you're used to participating in these kinds of things that keep you vital and alive and interested and participating, and that goes away, yeah, that's a big blow.
Yeah, it's tricky, and at first, when you go in for cataract surgery, everybody tells you within a few days you see clearly, but then that hasn't happened to me because of this disease. But at the same time, it's 5 months later, I'm finding the time a little bit long, and
indeed,
wish that I could get back to some of those activities. But anyhow, I'm glad that we have a cornea specialist here that's at least available for consultation and to go forward towards a resolution of my problem.
Well, Pierre, hopefully you'll be playing that cello soon enough. Really appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and maybe we can get some response, maybe even from government, to whether or not that would be something that would be possible within the healthcare system to develop an eye bank.
Generally, the ophthalmologists in the region are pushing to get this done, and I think it really needs to happen.
Pierre, I appreciate your time this morning. All the best to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, what an issue to be raised here this morning. That's a fascinating concept that we don't have an eye bank here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Just imagine the people that could benefit from a corneal implant in a timely manner, and the difference it makes in their lives. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we are going to get an update on the power situation in Newfoundland and Labrador coming up right after this. And we're back. We're going now to Newfoundland Power's Glenda Power to give us an update on the situation involving power in Newfoundland and Labrador right now. Hello, Glenda.
Good morning, Linda. It seems we talk a lot about storms and impacts, don't we?
Especially this year.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I mean, it started early December. We've had more storms, I think, in the last 2 months that impacted utility operations than we've had in at least the last 2 years. So yeah, the weather has been interesting, that's for sure. And we had an interesting night. So our crews were out overnight. We were prepared and ready. We expected to see some outages. Right now, we are at about 4,500 or so customers off. But it's a dynamic situation because earlier this morning we were at about 3,000 customers and working on that. But of course, we're still in the middle of the storm and seeing impacts. So just a little while ago, we had impacts in the Bonavista region with about 1,100 customers off. So in terms of the outages that occurred overnight and early this morning, in many of those cases, estimated response times are on our website. If you just go newfoundlandpower.com and click on outages, you'll see that information. So just for example, out of those 4,400 customers, we've got about 600 of them or so out on the southern shore in the Fermuse, Renews, Fairyland area and so on. They went out just before midnight. They'll have their power back very soon. We're estimating by 10 a.m., but it could be any minute. We had, several hundred customers out in Cowan Heights. They went out this morning. We expect they'll be back by 2 p.m. And then there are others all across the Avalon, and of course I mentioned Bonavista. Right now in the Bonavista region, and that's communities like Clayco, Somerville, and others, we have crews en route to assess. And in terms of our process, in many cases with storm impacts, it's physical infrastructure that's impacted, and we're seeing a lot of down lines in terms of the impacts of this storm. So for our customers out there, our crews get to the site. They need to assess the damage. They coordinate closely with our system control center. They fix the damage, and then they carefully and safely bring power back to customers. So it's a little bit of a process, and we know everyone out there is storm weary, so we really appreciate the patience, because when you have power outages, especially in winter weather, we know that that's not nice, and it has impacts, and we're trying to return everyone as quickly and as safely as possible.
Down lines, you said primarily infrastructure. What are we talking about? Poles that crack off? Is it wind or accumulated snow or ice on the lines that cause that to happen? What typically happens?
So, typically we could see all of that and more. For this particular storm, we're seeing maybe mainly lines impacted, but the snow is kind of a bit wet and heavy, unlike some of the lighter snow we've seen in other storms. So accumulation on lines could cause some issues as well. In terms of down lines, just remind everyone to stay back at least 10 meters because our crews need to get there to safely address if we have a line down, and to call us and to report that, because we consider that an emergency situation that we need to address as soon as we can.
Is arcing a problem when the winds start to howl?
It can be. Winds and snow and ice build up, right? So sometimes you'll see, you might wake up and your power's not gone, but you see that the clock on your oven or microwave or whatever is not the right time, so you know you had an outage at some point, but it could be just a minimal thing like that. So that can be an issue too, for sure.
So as of right now, approximately 4,500 customers are out for Muse. Could be back very soon.
Any minute, yeah.
So, and they've been out for quite a while. They're starting to feel pretty chilly.
They're getting chilly because they've been out since around midnight, right? So, and then there are others, like on our outage center, you'll see all the communities. And then in addition to Bonavista, like we had a Mundy Pond area go out at 5:30 this morning. We still need to assess that. Upper Gullies went out at about 5 a.m. So we're getting to where we need to be to make the repairs and bring people back on. But because the storm, we're still in the midst of it, we're seeing new outages come up that we need to address as well.
And when you feel those little, or witness those little blips, what does that typically mean? You know, you'll be sitting there watching TV and all of a sudden everything goes whoop. And everybody in the house goes, whoa. So what happens when that happens?
It's typically not a dangerous situation. It could be arcing on the line. It could be ice on the line that maybe caused a temporary issue. In those situations, we don't need people to call and report if the power has come back. But if you feel there's a power emergency, or if you see, sometimes you'll see sparks on a line, which also isn't really dangerous. But if you see things that look like flames, or if your power goes out and doesn't come back on, then we want to know about that. So we have an emergency line for that. It's 1-800-474-5711, and that's where we ask people to call when they have an outage or have something they consider an electrical emergency. So we really want to hear from you on that.
So
and
sparks are okay, but flames are bad.
I mean, you know, Linda, I'm not an engineer, so that's me boiling it down, I guess, for safety guidelines. But I would say if you're concerned and power goes out and doesn't come back on and you see something that's worrisome, give us a call.
Absolutely. I just had a vision of anyway, neither here nor there. But yeah, so you're doing your best. And by the way, I have a lot of linesmen in my family, and I just want to say what a great job they all do in all kinds of weather, when people are inside, and even if they don't have power and they're cold, at least they're not outside up on a pole.
And, you know, Linda, here's my experience with Newfoundland Power employees, particularly our power line technicians. They wouldn't want to be anywhere else. because they're committed. They're the people who need to get the job done. They take great pride in that. So I'll echo your praise for them. And I'll also mention our System Control Center, which is 24-hour operation, managing the grid and flow power and all those things. They're a vital part. And of course, we also have our contact center staff. So customer service representatives are on the lines and taking calls, and that number is 1-800-663-2802. So if you have a question that's not an emergency, or you don't need to report an outage but need to discuss something else, give them a call, and they're waiting to hear from you.
Glenda Power, appreciate this update. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. And no, I appreciate the opportunity to come on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Yeah, and you can't say enough about the linesmen who are out there in this terrible weather doing their level best to ensure that you have power going to your home or business. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we're going to get a little update on what's going on with the city of St. John's in this weather with Councillor Greg Noseworthy coming up right after this. And we're back. We're going now to the lead on public works with the City of St. John's and Ward 3 Councillor, Mr. Greg Noseworthy. Hello.
Good morning, Linda. How are you this morning?
Oh, good. How are you?
Not too bad. And listen, I just got to commend all our linesmen out there with Newfoundland Labrador Power. I tell you, my brother was a linesman with the military. It's no easy job, and I certainly don't have the wherewithal to climb up those poles, especially in these conditions that we're seeing. So hats off to them for keeping the lights on, the heat warm for everybody.
Absolutely. And I found out myself that in a rather unfortunate way that I have a bit of a fear of heights. So I can't imagine what it's like to have to climb up those poles like a pussycat to get up there and do what you got to do, dealing with electricity on top of that. So, hats off to all of them.
No, absolutely. And listen, hats off to our crews as well. I know we've got pretty significant snowstorm here hitting us today, of course, and it's going to be continuing for quite some time yet. But crews have been out now since last night, thankfully, and been able to clear roads and chat with a few folks. And we're seeing some good clearing in areas. Now, that said, the city's quite large, so what you're seeing in Cowan Heights versus down in the downtown or the Goulds or up around Wedgwood Park, it's going to be different in each area, but thankfully we've got our crews everywhere. They've been working around the clock to keep the roads open as best possible. I do want to report that we have a road closure. That's Hebron Way. Unfortunately, there's some pretty significant drifting snow, so that has led to a road closure, and that's between Searose Avenue and Majors Path. So if you're up around that area and you've got to be out, and of course I always advise people in these situations, stay off the roads if you can, but if you have to be out that area, please exercise extreme caution, and that road is closed, so it's inaccessible. And once again, I am getting reports of cars being stuck. I know the RCMP as well on the Trans-Canada, so please folks, stay off the roads if you can, because it is still treacherous out there.
Hebron Way appears to be becoming a bit of a problematic area, especially in these types of conditions. Is there any way, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here now, but is that something that the city might be able to look into to see what could be done to help mitigate, the drifting and that sort of thing in the Hebron Way area?
Yeah, well, our engineers are always looking at developments, and this is one of the things about St. John's. We have a rigorous development process to help make sure that we're avoiding these types of situations, so we're not seeing these whiteout conditions when we can. Unfortunately, this is an area of pretty high elevation. When you think about around Hebron Way, you're up as high as Signal Hill, if not higher, so it is several hundred feet up in the air. And it is pretty close to the sea. You are going to get that exposure to the winds, the snowdrifts, and those types of things. Now, that said, as part of all of our developments, there's natural landscapes that need to be put in, trees, those types of things. Over time, that'll help kind of block some of the snow. And as further development continues, I'm sure we'll see some better situations. But this is something that, look, we're in the North Atlantic. We're an island out in the ocean. we've got to contend with Mother Nature, and sometimes she's not so friendly to us. So as much as we want to see things open as quickly as possible, and we do our best to keep roads open 24/7, sometimes it isn't going to be possible, of course.
Credit where credit's due. I said it off the top. I was rather impressed when driving into work this morning. We got chauffeured in, by the way. I wasn't driving, but was impressed with the condition of the roads in the St. John's area, the main roads anyway. So crews are out. They've been out all night. I guess they're going to remain on the road throughout the day.
You've got us, yeah, exactly that. They'll be continuing to work around the clock. We have a priority system, so if you haven't seen a plow just yet, which is possible, of course, in some areas, they're going to be there. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten yet. And of course, this storm we're expecting to go for quite a bit longer, and then we do have some additional snow now over the next couple of days. So our normal standards for servicing, and crews will be out 24/7 type thing, but our normal standards for getting everything absolutely down to the pavement, that will take a little bit longer than normal. So bear with us, especially as we deal with additional snowfall coming now over the next couple of days.
And I know that the province has struggled with this over the years and is continuing to struggle with it now, and that's in the recruitment and retention of snowplow operators. How is the city doing with that aspect of things?
Well, thankfully, we've got a great crew, a full crew. We don't have that issue of recruitment. We do hire, of course. People come and go in positions, whether it's retirement or they find something else. But thankfully, we've got a great full crew, and it's not an issue for us at all, thankfully.
Well, Greg Noseworthy, anything that comes up, you let us know. Thank you for the update.
Absolutely, Linda. It's always a pleasure. Stay safe out there. And, of course, folks, please stay off the roads. If you got to be out, extreme caution. We don't want to see any accidents or stock cars.
No, indeed. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Linda. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. That is Ward 3 Councillor in the lead for Public Works, Mr. Greg Noseworthy. And again, we can't say it often enough. If you don't need to be out on the roads, what are you doing out there? Staying out of it. Everything's closed, basically, unless you have to be at work because you are working in an industry where you have to be there. There's really no need to be out on the road, so please stay in and enjoy listening to the radio. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we hope to speak with you. We're going now to Jane. You're on the air. Hi, Jane.
Oh, good morning, Linda. How are you today?
Oh, good.
Hard to turn our attention away from that white stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it really
anyway,
is.
I would like to make a comment about the gentleman who called in who has Fuchs, because I walked his walk. And I understand exactly how his life has been affected by this disease that we know how to moderate, how to fix. But when I had it happen to me, and I was diagnosed, it was back in 2002, I had to wait until there was a prime time at which you were ready for a transplant. I had the kind of transplant this gentleman had, which is called a DSEC, and that's a partial transplant in which they just replace the damaged layer of your cornea. If you looked at your cornea with a magnifying glass, it's like looking at a nuclear factory. It's amazing, the structures in the human body. But what got me at the time was I had no choice but to go to Halifax. That was the closest opportunity. I had a wonderful surgeon up there, but man, the costs of going and the difficulties of getting off the island, because the cornea tissue has a very short life. It's not like even a kidney or a heart. The gentleman is right in saying that there is no involvement with blood, so that it's easier to match. You don't have to match tissue for corneal transplants. But what I had to do to be able to get there, you got a phone call and you had to be in their surgery by 3:00, say, the next day.
Oh, wow.
Okay, well, we live in Newfoundland, right? And I stayed in a hostel at the time, which meant I also had to bring an escort, or they wouldn't let me stay in the hostel. So the hostel was more cost-effective, but yet wasn't, because I ended up having to pay, the travel costs for whoever came with me. It costs a fortune, but you can't put a price tag on your vision, But I wanted to say to that gentleman that I had the DSEC surgery he's referring to, and I had it done in 2009. And 2010, I've had both done, and a requirement was that I had to have my cataracts done prior to having that surgery. But I understand how it affects your life. I had to give up my job that I loved and I was very good at, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction. And one day I couldn't work anymore because I couldn't make out the difference between a 6 and a 9, and a lot of my job involved figures and stuff. So I do understand the absolute importance of, I think an eye tissue bank is necessary, but it needs to be it should be in Newfoundland, and we're very, very lucky to have that doctor who comes in to do tissue transplants. She's an expert. We got the tools. We know how to do it. We don't have any tissue. And I don't know. I called in before when she was being talked about. I called open line because I was thinking, where is the tissue coming from? Because at any given time up in Halifax, they had 5 doctors doing surgery, transplants, and at any given time, each of those people had 70 people waiting on a list, waiting for their vision to be restored. Not only that, it's a very, very painful disease because you develop blisters on your cornea, and when they break, it feels like you have glass in your eye. It just is the most awful, awful disease, and we can do something about it. And if people only knew that all they had to do, they don't take tissue from a live donor. They take tissue from somebody who passed away who cared enough to sign their card, their driver's license, to say they're an organ donor. And, when I came back from Halifax and I had my surgeries, and it took a while for my vision to clear. My life was restored. I was able to drive again. I was able to join a book club. And, you can't underestimate the value of this. So if it requires people having more understanding of how much value there is to being a tissue donor at your death and what a change it makes in a person's life,
But it seems like a terrible waste, doesn't it, Jane? I don't need to tell you. If someone signs an organ tissue donor card here in Newfoundland and Labrador, to know that their corneas are going to waste.
I think people have a stigma about the idea of somebody, cutting their eye out or something like that. I think that once you're finished with your tissues, you're not going to use them anymore because you're gone on to a better place, right? So I think that if your tissues can help somebody else have a normal life without suffering, there's no reason not to do it, And I do know, and I understand, the gentleman's a musician. He had to give up something he loves dearly, but he's also dependent on waiting and waiting and waiting. And, when you say, it could be a year, it could be, but when you look at the costs involved too, if you got to go back and forth to the mainland, and I mean, I'm a senior now, I'm 80 years old, and it has given me back, 14 years of, a normal life pretty well. And
Jane, did you? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but did you know you had Fuchs dystrophy, or is that something that you discovered when you had the cataracts?
No, my love. What happened was I developed a pain the day my mother died. That's why I remember it so well. And I didn't cry. I didn't cry until it was over, and then I cried, and I cried, and I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, I scratched my cornea I was mopping my face up with paper towels and everything. But anyway, my grief hit me hard that day. And the next day I had a feeling like my eyeball was cut. And it was so agonizing, and I had to lie down on the couch with a cloth over my eye. And finally, I ended up going to emergency, and they called an ophthalmologist to come in, and they sent me to his office. I had to go to his office. Somebody drove me, and he looked in my eyes, and he said, "It's not a corneal scratch." He said, "You have what's called you have Fuchs dystrophy, and you've been born with it." What it means essentially is when you were born with an inadequate number of corneal cells in your body. So you might have 5,000 cells. I might have been born with 500. The thing about corneal cells is they don't renew. When they die, they're gone, so you're depleting them all your life. So usually you don't know you have Fuchs until you start to have symptoms. And that's how I was diagnosed. And he told me right then and there, he said, your eyes will deteriorate steadily until you have to have transplants in both eyes. And you've got to be pretty well blind before you're ready to have that done. Well, I mean, I was still working at the time, and my life changed in that moment because your vision to me is probably your most important gift,
So precious,
and
yeah.
I followed that. Yeah, I followed a path with this wonderful ophthalmologist who now has retired. And if things happened and developed exactly as he told me they would, but I knew that I could depend on him when I got a blister. I knew what to do, and I knew that he was there to help me, and so forth. And thank God for him. But I'm out living and I'm out staying a lot of my doctors. Anyway, he found
Jane,
a wonderful doctor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're up to news time now, but I'm so happy you shared your story with us and are backing up Pierre on the idea that we should have a corneal bank here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yes, and that's the bottom line, and I think you can't underplay the importance of people signing their donor cards. Very simple thing to do. And we need a tissue bank here, definitely, yeah.
Jane, thank you so much. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. We're up to news time now with Zach Power. And we're back on VOCM Open Line. And as I mentioned off the top of the show this morning, the various provincial governments, of course, are coming down with their budgets. BC tabled its budget yesterday with a shocking and record-breaking deficit of $9.6 billion, pointing the finger at the impact of U.S. tariffs on the BC economy. And of course, BC is a resource-based economy, as are most provinces here across Canada, including here in Newfoundland and Labrador, where the projected deficit so far is expected to hit $1 billion. And here to talk to us a little bit about Mr. Trump and the impact on provinces and how provinces are, having to deal with all of this is the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Franco Terrazzano. Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. So I noticed the story out of BC, and I don't know exactly what's going on in BC right now, but a $9.6 billion deficit seems astounding to me. It's record-breaking as far as we know. Newfoundland and Labrador itself is, as of the fall fiscal update, facing a $1 billion deficit. We're both resource-based economies here in Canada and right across Canada for that matter. So is this the Trump effect that we're seeing?
Well, that's a great question, right? And so I think the best way to go about answering that is this. It's twofold. Number one, like President Trump's tariffs obviously impact our economy, right? It's imposing a tax. It's also a tax on American consumers, making life more expensive in the United States. That is the effect of a tariff. But of course, it impacts our ability to buy and sell goods across the border, right? So that also impacts the economy. That impacts revenue. But especially when you look at British Columbia, they were running massive deficits deteriorating their finances long before Trump came to office this second time, right? In BC, we have seen years of massive government borrowing, massive government spending. And look, the BC budget is a dumpster fire. Record amount of borrowing, spending going up by another $4 billion this year, all while the EB government in BC is hiking taxes, right? They have an income tax hike in the budget. They have this sneaky backdoor income tax grab known as bracket creep in the budget. They're also removing some provincial sales tax exemptions, so some PST hikes in British Columbia. So while I would say that Trump's tariffs obviously impacts Canada's economy, the BC debt disaster was long before Trump, and it's really because these politicians have been spending like crazy for years and years and years out on the West Coast.
So that's BC. What about the rest of the country? Any other, problematic areas that you can see?
Yeah, well, I would say just like from the federal government standpoint, that's the case as well, right? Like the federal government this year is borrowing, $80 billion. The federal debt is really a problem because, debt interest charges are now costing us more than $1 billion a week, right? So not even paying down the federal debt, just paying interest on the federal debt. So we're essentially losing out on a brand new hospital every single week here in Canada because that money is going to pay interest on the federal debt. And federally, it's the same situation I explained out in British Columbia, where the government has been borrowing money for for a decade now. So even before Trump came to power, the government was spending like crazy. The government continues to spend like crazy. I mean, as weird as this sounds, Carney is actually spending about $38 billion more this year than the Trudeau government spent last year. So again, Trump's tariffs impact our economy for sure, but the federal government, like the BC government, the problem was long before Trump, and it's the massive spending.
It seems to me that governments have been okay with running deficits and have been okay with accruing debt over the last little while. And I guess it's, it's really coming to light now with the economic pressure that is created by something unexpected like Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, there's also pressure on the federal government, over the last couple of years because of the inflation. And a large part of the inflation that Canadians felt was because of the federal government's borrowing, right? Because during the pandemic, you saw something different happen in terms of government finances, where you had the Bank of Canada, so the central bank in Ottawa, printing up hundreds of billions of dollars of new dollars right out of thin air, dropping it into our economy, leading to 40-year high inflation. That then resulted in higher interest rates. You just had people's lives becoming more expensive. So there was certainly massive pressure on the federal government in the last couple of years. You've already heard some bond rating agencies worry or warn about the deteriorating federal finances. But at the end of the day, you do have to pay the piper, right? There's no getting around that. You even saw that in the 90s where these provinces, the federal government, they've been kicking the deficit can down the road, and eventually they were forced to make some very, very tough decisions and in some cases drastically cut spending.
Well, here in Newfoundland and Labrador, of course, we have a new government, and during the election campaign, a lot of promises were made, a lot of promises that there will be no tax increases, that some taxes will be cut, and yet we're staring down the barrel of a $1 billion deficit. Do you think that's possible?
Well, they have to cut spending. And I know in Newfoundland and Labrador, I've been watching this for years now. I remember there was the Premier's Economic Council, that report that came out maybe about 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but it really showed the extent of, how much the Newfoundland and Labrador government has been spending and how spending increases essentially are driving the debt problem out there. It kind of goes the same way. And, I'll make kind of a broader point here. Is the biggest threat to government services is not even ideology. The biggest threat to government services are interest charges on the debt. I know in Newfoundland and Labrador this year, right, interest charges costing about $1 billion this year. Again, a brand new hospital. And I make that point by even looking at some NDP governments that have been in place in Canada, specifically in Saskatchewan in the 90s. Debt interest charges charges got so out of hand that province was forced to close dozens of hospitals across Saskatchewan. So that is the biggest threat to a government program, is the interest charges on the debt that the government has to pay.
And is the burden always on the taxpayer to ante up?
Well, I hope it's not, right? Like, look, right now would probably be the worst possible time to be raising taxes, right? Like, I don't need to tell you, I don't need to tell your listeners, like, everybody's struggling with the cost of living, and taxes are just going to make life even more expensive. But also, too, like, tax increases hurt our economy, right? Everyone's talking about what's going on with Canada, the U.S., and their whole economic situation we're facing. Like, we got to be able to cut taxes here to help spur economic growth, to be more competitive as a country. So tax hikes would be the worst possible thing. So I do not think the burden should fall on taxpayers. I think the burden has to fall on our politicians and the government to be like, hey, Canadians have been tightening their belts for years now. It's time for the government to tighten their belts.
Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Hey, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Your thoughts on what he's had to say, by all means, do give us a call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to speak with the Executive Director of the Association of Seafood Producers, Lorelei Roberts, about what they're calling market manipulation being a myth that the FFAW is perpetrating. You'll want to hear what she has to say there. And we're going to go now to the Executive Director of the Association of Seafood Producers here in Newfoundland and Labrador, Lorelei Roberts. Hello, Lorelei.
Good morning, Linda.
So you put out a release yesterday, and to summarize, the FFAW's statement that processors are responsible for market manipulation in the 2025 price difference between Gulf crab and Newfoundland and Labrador snow crab is, quote, an imaginary tale. And you're saying that one of the biggest issues affecting snow crab market pricing here in the province is not being able to start the fishery in a timely manner, and that has a material negative long-term effect on pricing. And we wanted you to explain that.
So, Linda, it's basic economics. When supply is low, it fetches a premium price. When supply is higher, it actually levels out the price. So, I mean, anybody who's done economics will know that. And in the case of Newfoundland Labrador crab and Gulf crab has a smaller amount of crab that is fished. So Gulf crab is only 22.1% of the total Canadian crab production, which is, if it's under 30%, it's considered a limited supply of production. And we have a much higher catch in Newfoundland and Labrador. And Gulf crab usually starts before us. It runs about 6 to 8 weeks. It's concluded by May month. So buyers will tend to pay higher prices for the Gulf crabs because it's in limited supply and it's over quicker. So as a result, if we delay getting the Newfoundland and Labrador crab on the market at the same time the Gulf crab is on the market, we've basically allowed the Gulf crab to become more of a limited quantity of a supply of crab, which buyers will buy.
But don't they go to the same buyers? Aren't the same buyers purchasing this for the same markets?
In some cases, there are markets that differ for Gulf crab, but yes, they do go to the same markets. But, as I explained, from an economic standpoint, when you have a limited supply up front, it's a higher premium. When the market gets glutted with crab and it all comes on at a later time, then that's when the price drops, it levels out, and they pay less.
And so when you say glutted, you mean because some of the crab fisheries in recent years have been delayed?
Yes. So if we were able to get our crab out earlier than what we have been doing in the past, we would be able to compete and the market would stabilize quicker. So therefore, the premium price or the differential between the price in Gulf crab and Newfoundland crab would be more even.
And what are some of the impediments to getting, we know the history of some of the pricing disputes that have occurred in recent years, but are there any impediments, let's say, for instance, leading into this coming crab season? Because it's coming upon us pretty quickly.
It is, and, I'll speak from the Association of Seafood Producers side, because that's really the only side that I can speak from, is that we're willing to get talking about price as soon as possible. We want the fishery to go ahead. We want to work with our harvesters. We have good relationships with most of our harvesters. So, in terms of the FFAW speaking, they would have to speak for their own selves. But that is where that is where ASP stands. We want to be able to begin this fishery on time, and basically try to assist the industry in narrowing the price differential with the Gulf. And we've committed to working with harvesters. We committed to working with plant workers, our processors, and the communities to support the long-term market stability of Newfoundland and Labrador snow crab industry.
Is there a way to reduce that differential, as you put it? Is there a way to ensure that harvesters in Newfoundland and Labrador are getting as close to, if not equal to, the price that's being fetched for Gulf crab?
Our single biggest controllable factor is that we start the fishery on time.
And that would make it more of a level playing field?
It would.
So what are crab negotiations like right now from the ASP's perspective? Have you started that process?
So crab negotiations don't typically start until the science is done, because it helps to know what the total allowable catch is for the industry for the year. And those activities are ongoing right now in terms of determining what the tax might be. So once that's done, then we will begin chatting about the price.
And is this typically how this process plays out? Is the science still ongoing during February month?
That's typically how it plays out. And Linda, I do just want to, say to you with regard to, you asked a question as to why they pay higher prices for Gulf crab. It's because when there's only Gulf crab in the market early, customers need to overpay to compete for the limited supply from that source, because they don't know when the NL crab is going to get to the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when do you expect the numbers to be in on the crab assessments?
Typically, like within the next week or 2 weeks or so, we will hear what the total allowable catch is, and then negotiations do start in March.
And what has the science been saying to now? How's the crab doing? Do we expect any major changes when it comes to total allowable catch?
I would leave that for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada to speak to. That is their responsibility to set the total allowable catches. And, again, the science is ongoing as we speak, so they will soon be in a position, hopefully, to come out and speak to that.
And how would you categorize the relationship with the FFAW? I know it's been fraught with a lot of difficulties in the past, but are you willing to sit down and be open to suggestions and, working with them and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. And, we've indicated no different at any point in time. We're always willing to come and speak and to them and negotiate in a collaborative fashion. And that is basically where we stand, and we've said that at every opportunity.
Lorelei Roberts, I do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Lorelei Roberts, of course, is the Executive Director of the Association of Seafood Producers. The FFAW, of course, welcome to give us a call and let us know what they have to say about what ASP is saying. We're going to go now to Melvin. You're on the air. Hi, Melvin.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Yourself, you got a good morning at this job.
Yeah, it's busy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm calling. I was at the mall yesterday, and I got a paper here. A guy gave me. He was 83-year-old, and about the home eating supplement program, for instance, Stovall. And they said the minimum purchase of 250 liters of oil is required from January the 1st, 2025 to December the 31st, 2025. And he told me he got his check in July, but he sent it in for this year, and the letter came back this week saying he's not entitled to it. And the money he got last year was July, that's for last winter, so that's no good for this winter.
No, indeed. So why isn't he entitled to it? Do you know?
Oh, they said no reason why, only he wouldn't be entitled to it. The letter came back saying you're not entitled to it, this money for this year. But that money he got in July, that was for 2025. Right.
Yeah.
So, and he said, like he said, he's making less than $17,000 a year. His gross earnings. So he's living in his father's house, a real old house, and only for that he said he wouldn't be able to live at all. Right. But there's something around there, like 2 or 3 people were there talking about it. So I didn't know if you people know anything about it.
No, that's news to me. So we'll see what others have to say. If anyone else has encountered something similar, that they received the home heating rebate last year but are not entitled to it this year. We'll see what others have to say.
Well, he said he sent in his form last year in February, and he got his money in July, $500. But this year, it's come back. The letter came back.
Yeah.
And it don't make sense what's there to me. And the people that was there talking about it, the people there making $150,000. Why do they need money from government? You know, you made $150 or less, you get $200 from the government.
Right.
That don't make sense to me. They don't.
Well, Melvin, we'll see if anyone else has encountered a similar kind of problem, or if there's anybody out there who has an answer for us. I appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much.
There's 2 people there had the letters came back, you know, so it must be everybody can't be getting any money this year.
Something's going on by the sounds of it. All right, Melvin, we'll see
I got one more question to ask you. You asked the premier when you get down to him sometime. He can't be saving money. Like, that's all right, like that. $275,000 from Mr. William, that's no problem at all. Only it's taken on the Medicare. That's why I would agree with that. But I'd say I should go so high as say 60% of the people working with the government is going on in a government vehicle. So why don't they go to work in their own vehicle? You know, instead of burning the taxpayers' gas. Because I know it's one place, a girl goes home in a car and a father goes home in a pickup, working with the Department of Transportation. You know, there's something around here. Someone not looking at something.
Yeah, the size of the fleet, you mean, and how it's being used.
Well, the last 3 premiers, I asked 2 that question. How come the people working with the government goes home in a government vehicle? And probably I know it's 2 or 3 in the same community. And there's 2 of them, they don't know. And it never answered me. And the only one did answer me and told the truth was Paul Davis. He said, well, I don't really know. I'll tell you the truth. And the other 2 never answered me.
Well, Melvin, you're raising a good point, and we have the transportation minister coming up next. Maybe he has some answers for that. I appreciate your time.
I say you got to put the gas in your car to go to work.
I absolutely do.
VOCM is not giving you a car.
No, they're not.
So if I'm working with the Department of Transportation, why do they give me a truck to warm in? Or working with the forestry or the wildlife?
Melvin, you're raising good questions. I appreciate your time.
Okay. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. Bye.
And good questions indeed. The Transportation Minister, Barry Petton, is coming up next. We'll see what he has to say about that. And another issue that was raised by a caller yesterday on the show about workforce adjustments that are being made to boost up the earnings of mechanics as a part of a recruitment and retention type of strategy that he says is causing some problems in the workplace. Anyway, we'll be back right after this. And we are going now to the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, Mr. Barry Petton. Hello, Barry.
Good morning, Linda. How are you?
I'm great. How are crews making out this morning?
Doing well. I mean, yeah, we were hit with another major storm, but for all indications, everything's going good. Witness Bay line had to be closed this morning because that's not a surprise. It's a very common area during heavy snowfalls with wind and what have you. So hopefully that won't be closed for long. But otherwise, I mean, crews are out doing their best, and hopefully we'll they're keeping ahead of it, and hopefully when the storm passes, we'll be back to normal as soon after. But everything's going fine. As good as can be expected from our end, yes.
So the 24-hour snow clearing commitment that was made, is it being met now?
For the most part, it is, yeah. In areas where we were short on getting operators, we've used a combination of overtime and, changing up different shifts and moving people around. So it's probably not where I'd like it to be, but it's much improved to what it was other years. So, certain regions have got the full 20. I think Western Newfoundland, around Stephenville, those areas, I think we got them up. We're fully staffed. Areas where we're not fully staffed, we're using a combination of, like, say, moving staff around and overtime, what have you, to provide the service that we've committed to doing on those 14 routes.
And have you had to make market adjustments to help recruit or retain not only operators but mechanics as well?
Yes, absolutely. Well, actually, the previous administration had done a $12,000 market adjustment for mechanics before we ever come to power, actually. This has been a long-standing issue. We've had trouble maintaining mechanics for a long time, and it's costed the government because we're sending in equipment out to private garages, and it's costed private garages much higher than what it is for the province to do it themselves in their own depots. Ideally, we want to have mechanics on board, and we've put out many calls to have mechanics apply. And unfortunately, the wage package that the province are offering wasn't competitive to other similar operations. Like, I'll use City of St. John's as one, but there's others offer a better compensation package, and obviously that's where it'll go, and rightfully so. So it was recognized by the previous government of needing it, and when we took over, the situation had improved marginally, but we're still way beyond. And the cost of getting this service done out to private garages was no comparison to what we could do it in-house. So it was well in our mind. It was a sensible decision to add on an extra market adjustment. And I want to point something else out about this market adjustment, Linda. This was negotiated in the collective agreements with NAPE. It's an MOU in the NAPE agreements, the MOS agreements, and it basically says that it's a market adjustment. It's all in collective agreements. If you're unable to retain, recruit employees in a particular geographic site, which is provincial for us, market adjustments are okay. They've signed off on this, so I find sometimes rich for Mr. Earl to be making comments publicly, and all the while he signed off on this MOU. So I've been I'm a straight shooter. I'm very upfront. I've called him on every time when I put the last market adjustment in. I called and discussed it before I made it public. As well, I've done many other things. When we announced 24-hour snow clearing, when we announced we're stopping peat trees, I'm trying to have a collaborative, a good working relation with them. But it's challenging sometimes when I hear those comments, and they're not accurate. And it sounds good in the public airways, and sounds good to his membership. But from our side of the equation, it's not fair ball, because this is something that he signed off on. I inherited when I come on as minister. It's an MOU there, and it's a tool. I don't like market adjustments, so anyone listening I don't like them. But when I got a situation where we put out the call for positions, we had 180 apply, and we find 20 some odd that are suitable, and we can't fill out our complement of staff. We got a problem, and I've been left with no other mechanism but a market adjustment. We got graduates that are down there with loads of equipment, and I got one mechanic in White Hills. I got a problem. So I have no choice but to use market adjustments. I've made it clear to my colleagues and whoever wanted to hear me, I don't like market adjustments. I think it should be negotiated. Something that should happen at the bargaining table, and hopefully it will happen at the bargaining table. It's not for me to decide. That's Treasury Board's, Mr. Party's department. But I got a department to run. We got 10,000 kilometers worth of road to maintain, and it's a challenge, and it's something that it's a commitment we take serious. It's a safer communities as part of our platform, and it's a commitment that I'm going to continue on to do with the best of my abilities, with whatever mechanisms I have in place.
And as you indicated, it's cheaper than having to go to the private marketplace and put them in garages and the like.
Oh, absolutely. There's no comparison. And another point, too, I should point out, too, I don't know if I've had a lot of feedback from staff. I understand staff feeling slighted or feeling that they're undervalued if they never received a market value, but that's not something that I just decide to do. I don't, as Minister, go in and say, I'm going to give you a market adjustment. I have to defend that to the Treasury Board. And only way you defend it is with facts and data. And the data presents itself that a market adjustment are warranted for every equipment operators and mechanics. We don't have the same problem for the other positions within our operations. And if we do, and if we look for welders and we can't get them, and it proves to be a major problem, we will also have to apply a market adjustment. Hopefully the negotiation solves that. But if not, I will have no choice but to do that at that time. But right now, I can't just decide I'm going to give a welder a market adjustment when there's no real justified reason, because I put out a call for applications, and we're getting more than enough people apply. So that needs to be cleared the year too, because I know a lot of people within the depots, within my department, have had concerns, and I understand them. I really do. But I mean, I'm left with no other recourse either.
So that's the mechanism that's in place now. But how do you address it moving forward? Do you keep moving in this type of direction, or do you reassess the whole works?
Yeah, well, I think that's the question that Minister Party is probably going to have to deal with, and the unions when it comes to collective bargaining. I think this is not the answer. These one-offs are not the answer. I don't like them. But in order to maintain government, to keep us operating, I mean, it's a big operation. Transportation and infrastructure is a big operation to maintain our snow, right across this province. It's huge undertaking, and you need staff to do it. So, I mean, ideally, yes, I'd like it to be a negotiated wage, and that's something that, like I say, Treasury Board can deal with through negotiations. That's not my shop. My hope is that they do work it out, both sides, when they get to the bargaining table, because ideally we should not be having to use this as a recourse, and it's become more common, and it's something that I really truly don't like to do, but it's unfortunately our hands are tied.
Now, I don't know if you heard the previous caller, but he was asking about the home heating rebate and saying that he's aware of some people who are being told that well, they got it last year, they're not getting it this year. Have you heard anything similar as an MHA or as the minister?
No, I was listening to his call. No, I don't actually. I don't know if it's a deadline where they late applying. I'm not really sure. That's something I don't need no details, but not to my knowledge. I mean, everything should be good to go with that. So but I did hear I was listening to him actually, and no, I don't have an answer for him. It's from where I sit to. I've not been told any other. So you need to probably check in some details, make a call, and inquire whoever it is, because there may be an error. Who knows? Or there may be something delayed with the application. But otherwise, everything should be. There's no different from any other year.
Minister Barry Pitton, I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. We're going to take a very short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from the president of the FFAW, Duane Street, right after this. We're back. We're going now to the president of the FFAW, Duane Street. Hello, Duane.
Good morning, Linda.
You got the snowblower on the go, or what?
Yeah, I think the only one that's enjoying this morning is my dog.
Mine too. She loves the snow, loves it.
Yeah.
But Duane, that's not why we were seeking you out, and I'm sure you heard the conversation with Lorelei Roberts regarding this release that they put out yesterday, calling market manipulation, that is what the FFAW has been alleging for some time, a myth. What's your response?
Boy, that was something, wasn't it? While I appreciate Ms. Roberts' economics lesson there this morning, Linda, I actually have a master's degree in political economy, so let's have a chat about all this. So last year, obviously, your listeners probably recall, we've been speaking to Patty and now you about this a million times. What we saw, we finished out the 2024 season pretty much on par with the Gulf when it came to the earner bar index. And when we got our first reporting last year, the Gulf was pretty much on par to where they had finished. And we had dropped significantly. And that gap that's usually a few cents, we're always a little bit off from the Gulf. That gap had grown to a ridiculous amount that had never been seen in history. And we were like, okay, what is going on here? And we got indications of that at the Boston Seafood Show in March last year when there were rumblings of the first contract being signed out of Newfoundland. And our counterparts in the Maritimes were saying, well, that can't be right. Makes no sense to sign it that low. Why would they do that? No, it can't be right. And it's funny that when it all rolled out at the end of the year, it was exactly pretty much to the penny, the number that we had heard in Boston. So, I sat across the table from Jeff Loader, the previous executive director, and I appreciate that, Ms. Roberts wasn't around when all this happened, who looked me in the face and said, oh, yeah, we'll take a loss. We'll take a couple bad years if that teaches you guys a lesson. So, that's the type of cats that you're dealing with. And, I think what Ms. Roberts was trying to explain there was supply-demand elasticity, but I'm not really sure she really understands it herself. But when you're dealing with a luxury item that really has no substitute, you can kind of throw that out the window. And what she's alluding to, she's kind of preaching the same message that we're really sick of from our producers, that somehow we have an inferior product, that, because we have so much crab, Newfoundland and Labrador is essentially the Costco snow crab market. And that's not the case. Yes, a couple of years there during COVID, we had a bit of inventory kicking around, but, it generally clears out pretty quickly. And I was really happy to hear you ask some of the questions that you did, like, isn't a crab, right? It's all going to the same place. So we're sick of the same rhetoric. We know what happened. And it's clear that they're trying to get out from underneath that now. And, we don't have an inferior product. When I read that release yesterday, I sat there and just trying to blame this on chaos and late starts, right? So nobody loves chaos more than the ASP, and that's quite clear what happened this year, because I don't think they realize the breaking point that this industry's at. And we'll talk a little bit towards the end of the call about what happened yesterday and what the Premier did, and, I can't commend him enough. But we have been under the thumb of these processors for so long. And yes, there have been tie-ups. And if Ms. Roberts wants to go back and do a little bit of a history lesson over the past few years, John Sackton actually said that one of the longest tie-ups that we had was the best thing that ever happened to the market. That's not the case here. If she wants to look at 2024 and try to say, oh, yeah, well, the Gulf got their crab out earlier and they started earlier and that's why they got a higher price. No. On paper, the Gulf opened March 15th. But again, if she wants to go back and actually get some factual information, the Gulf was iced in. And the Gulf started fishing on April 5th, and we started fishing on April 10th. So she can throw out that excuse. What we're dealing with here, Linda, is the ASP underselling in the market, suppressing the price, the smaller members of ASP having no choice but to toe the party line, the big five absolutely manipulating that formula so it didn't work for harvesters and did not return a fair share.
So the release that they've put out appears to be putting the blame directly on the harvesters, on the union itself.
Of course it is. I mean, when have the ASP ever accepted any accountability? When have they ever said, oh, yeah, this is our fault? It's always deflect, and it's all the union's fault. But it's time for the ASP to sit down, do some self-reflection, and if they really want to collaborate, like they always seem to say, they preach transparency, they preach collaboration. We're not interested. I mean, we're done. And we've said that to government. We're sitting down with Mike Guzzi next week, and we are going to come up with a different way of negotiating. We cannot sit in front of somebody saying they're at the table in good faith when they are willing to go in the market, undersell the product just to screw our members and just to say, look at what your union did. When all your union did, it was harvesters at the table trying to create a formula that was going to treat everybody equally, that was going to bring fair returns to our members and get the season started on time. Last year, the season started on time. Again, why are they talking about chaos and delays? And I heard her talking about flooding the market. Last year was the most consistent supply to the market that we've ever had. There was no tie-up. We started on time. Harvesters weren't tied up. Harvesters weren't scheduled. And we see the biggest differential that we've seen in history. I mean, their own release doesn't even make sense. So I really think the ASP need to sit down and say, okay, it's time to start behaving in a proper way here because they are the ones causing chaos. They are the ones damaging their reputation in the market, and they are the ones hurting our industry.
You mentioned the Premier, and of course this government has a standalone department now for fisheries, and the Deputy Minister recently appointed as a former president of the FFAW. How does that bode now for the concerns that you're raising?
So, Linda, so far, I mean, yesterday, the Premier and the Minister O'Driscoll, sent us a letter. And I heard you ask a question earlier about how do we reduce that differential in the market. And yesterday, I'm not sure people really understand the magnitude of what a step that was. Because what the Premier did yesterday was create competition. He eliminated the red tape and the barriers. He took the politics out of who's going to get a processing license. And if you want to invest in a processing plant here in this province, the Premier has committed that you will get a conditional license that will help you go to the bank, secure that financing, and take away a lot of the barriers that were there. Because, when we had the Processing Licensing Board, and as of yesterday, that has been eliminated, who got a processing license was very political. We all know the names of folks who are walking around with crab processing licenses in their pocket and never processed a pound. And they tend to be the bodies of the government at the time, which was the Liberals. And what Tony Wakeham and Minister O'Driscoll did yesterday, in 108 days in office, is more than we saw out of the Liberal government in 10 years. So that was a very, very important move. We commend them. We can't thank them enough. And, yesterday they broke the shackles for harvesters and plant workers. And I hear some worries out there from plant workers. But here's the thing. Nobody's going to take crab out of your plant. This is on the company. If the company doesn't want to lose product, then the company's going to have to pay for it. And that's what competition does. So I'm just going to use an example of, say, OCI. And if I'm a plant worker working for OCI right now, I would be pushing the company to make sure that they're going to pay harvesters fairly, because no harvester who's selling to OCI for 20 years is going to leave that company if they're going to pay me the same price as the guy in the next community. So that's what competition does. Competition is good for everybody, and it's going to be good for our communities, and it's going to make sure that the value of our fishery stays in our communities. And, a lot of these concerns, let's be realistic here, Linda. The members of ASP last year got caught shipping enough product off this province, unprocessed, to run a small crab plant. So let's put the blame here where it belongs.
So for the benefit of our listeners, and we're up to news time now, but I'll give you a few moments to explain this. For the benefit of our listeners, what is it that Premier Tony Wakeham and Minister O'Driscoll outlined in this letter?
What they did, they removed the current board that's in place that would have to approve processing licenses. There was a 2-year freeze on any new processing licenses in this province. That's gone. And the issue that anybody would run into, like if you wanted to go build a crab plant here, you have to go to bank for financing. And it's hard to go to a bank with a business plan and say, okay, I'm going to build a cod plant in Lassie. And the bank is going to say, okay, so do you have the license to do this? And you're going to say, no, but if you give me the money, they'll give it to me. And a bank's not going to do that. I mean, it's risk, right? So what they've done, they've created a new conditional license. So if you want to build that cod plant in Lassie, the government will give you that conditional license, and you can go to the bank and say, look, here's my license. Once my plant is up, it's CFIA approved, and I'm ready to go. They're going to make this license operational. And we need competition, and we need more processing, because right now we're leaving millions of pounds of cod in the water this year simply because there's nowhere to process it. So this is going to be a great opportunity. We're really excited. We're excited for all of our members. And again, we thank the Premier. We thank the Minister. I will say, after sitting across the table from numerous governments over the years, this is the first time I am confident that this government is listening to the workers, the people in the communities, and not those big 5 companies.
Duane Street, I do appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Linda. And, if Ms. Roberts really needs to brush up on her economics, and I think she does, to avoid another embarrassing call like the one we just had to sit through, I highly recommend the Master's Program at MUN. Support local.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. Bye-bye. That's Duane Street, president of the FFAW. Any thoughts on what either ASP Executive Director Lorelei Roberts said, or what Duane Street of the FFAW just said? You're welcome to give us a call.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
And we're back, and we're going now to Terry. You're on the air. Hi, Terry.
Hi, how you doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, dog.
That's good. What's in your mind?
I'm going to get to the point this morning because my landline doesn't work. Power just went. My telephone, I'm not too sure how much I got left today. So.
Gotcha.
Anyway, first of all, I realized, as a lot of people do in this seniors, the price of food and heat bills have definitely gone up. Now, the other day, I just got my residential property taxes, and I see it's gone up, which I expected it anyway. But on top of everything, like a lot of things these days, they dropped the senior discount 10% on it. Now, I did call the Paradise there. They told me it was done the doctor's job.
Sorry, Terry, you're cutting in and out, but so just to summarize for our listeners, I think I'm picking up what you're laying down here. So you say you got your tax bill with the town of Paradise, taxes are up, that didn't surprise you, but they've dropped the seniors discount?
Yes, they have.
Okay, and so you called the town, and what did they tell you?
Apparently, the provincial government, the gentlemen or people that cancel the 10% senior discount out. And, you know, like myself, I don't mind it as much as a lot of other seniors. I know I can afford to pay the difference, but I'm sure there's a lot of seniors out there who cannot at 10% discount.
Well, I don't think it would come as a surprise to a lot of people that property assessments in Paradise in particular, because it's such a desirable community to live in, have been steadily going up over the last number of years. I don't know what the latest market numbers are showing, but one would think that if you've had a house in Paradise for 20, 30, 40 years, that the value on it would probably be quite high right now.
Yes, it is. And like that based on that, I know the taxes were going up. It's just that when your discount is down. And I've been getting that senior discount, so I do believe now for the last 7 years. Which, when you're talking so many thousands of dollars, it do make a difference to you.
Well, no doubt it makes a difference for sure. Terry, unfortunately, your line is really quite poor and it's cutting in and out. But I think we got the gist of what you're saying. We'll see if we can't get somebody with the town of Paradise to explain why the 10% seniors discount was dropped in the town of Paradise this year.
Okay, now I don't believe, I'm just going to keep you for another couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's only in Paradise, because I believe in the NTV News last week, I believe I did hear a gentleman out there say the same thing. Discount is also dropped.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I'm not, I can't tell you one way or another right now, but it's entirely possible. Terry, I do appreciate your call this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All righty. Bye-bye. We'd like to hear from somebody with the town of Paradise to talk about the seniors discount and why it was dropped. It must be very difficult for someone who has been living in Paradise for quite a number of years to suddenly realize that their tax bill has not only gone up, but they're no longer getting the discount. We're going to go now to Bill. You're on the air. Hi, Bill.
Yes, good morning. You had a caller yesterday talk about flyers that were being delivered. I really appreciate getting my flyer, and it lands right on my front door. It's a great thing. And you can shop and you can see where the bargains are, and then he also mentioned that they were getting scooped up by the city trucks and getting dumped in the harbor, but the city doesn't dump snow in the harbor anymore.
Right, well, fair enough. But I think his point was clear that in his particular part of the city, the flyers are ending up all over the place and then getting scooped up and being dumped somewhere. Yeah.
That's too bad. But I must say, they do it really well in where I live. They just deliver it, and I think it's a great thing. And he was saying about you can just go online and look up all these things now. Well, not everybody is online, and which brings me to my main point, is about our provincial libraries.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think there was a caller last week. I think he was a retired educator. I was really surprised that he said that we should reduce the number. And my call is to say, I support the public library, our provincial libraries, and I think they're great. It's I'm a believer in lifelong education. I think they call it lifelong learning. And libraries are part of the Department of Education. So, and there's 96. I looked up on the website. There's 96 libraries throughout the province, and they offer a great service. I use the library, often. I use it for books, but I also go in and I get online, and you can book a computer at the library, and the staff there are usually really helpful about showing you how to do things on the computer and how to look up things and print things and things like that. They have printing services, and you can print and you pay a small fee for prints. And they got photocopying, they got scanning, they got audiobooks. Some places have community room rentals. Some places have training and programs, the story time, magazines, DVDs. The list goes on. It's a great resource, and I'd encourage anybody who's got a library in their town to use it. And it's not just for, and then of course the mainstay is books. I mean, you can go and get interested in the topic and read the books they got there. And if they don't have them at that particular library, they can do interlibrary loans from different other libraries around the province, and I've used that service before. So I think it's a great service. I think the provincial government, I think the budget for libraries is, I think last year was $13.5 million, and that's for 96 libraries.
It's a great resource for sure, and I know quite a few people actually who make regular use of libraries and really do benefit from it. Like you say, you're not the only person who's a lifelong learner. That's absolutely key and essential to keeping us all healthy.
Exactly. I think so. I just had to go. I had to make it. Like I heard that call last week, and I had to make the plug. To say that I think is money well spent by the government. And everyone has access, whether you're young or old. And if there's a library in your town, then go use it and use it often. And the service could only improve. And I think the staff there that I've encountered at all libraries that I've used have been really helpful.
Bill, really appreciate your call this morning. Thank you.
Okay, have a good day now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from the president of NAPE, Jerry Earle, coming up right after this. We are going now to the president of of NAPE, Jerry Earle. Hi, Jerry.
Good morning, Linda. On this stormy morning, at least here on the east coast of our province.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, by the way, to all your many, many members who go in, as they always do, on these storm days. No storm days for a lot of people.
No, and a lot of people don't realize that. I'd certainly like to echo that, Linda. Like, there are literally thousands, and other workers certainly too, that report to work on such a day as this, whether it be those that we're going to touch on in our MOS bargaining unit that's trying to keep our highways net open and that equipment repaired, our many healthcare facilities, acute and long-term care, home care, correction facilities. All these workers, no matter the weather, have to make every effort to get to work and provide many services, including yourselves, that keep us informed. So thank you to everybody that makes that extra effort.
So, Jerry, I don't know if you heard the show yesterday, but we received a call from a listener who was expressing some concern about these labor market adjustments that have been made to try to retain mechanics in the Department of Transportation. A difficult role to fill, according to the minister. And according to the caller yesterday, indicating that it's creating some tensions and divisions within the department because there are other people working elbow to elbow with some of these mechanics, knowing that they're getting paid significantly more. So I was hoping that we could address this with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's been referred to there is what we call a market adjustment. It's a tool that government have, one that we have said for some time to officials in Treasury Board, past and present. It's an outdated, ineffective tool that actually, in this case, the individual is right, and many of the works, it pits one worker against another. This is, when we talk about MOS, or maintenance operation bargaining, it's not a gigantic bargains. They do incredible work across the province on a day like today. They're the ones that's out there, the heavy equipment operators. Then we have the heavy equipment technicians, but there are other trades. There's welders there and multiple other trades that make sure the equipment is maintained, ready at the call. When it goes out, you think conditions, gets damaged, goes in many of these trades. So what happened there, a market adjustment was done initially for what we call the ATTs, heavy equipment technicians, that repaired equipment. An initial one was done, and then they done a secondary one Since then, they've done one for the heavy equipment operators. That's when you'll see operating these flyers out on the highways. But a number of trade involved wasn't. So, like I said, it's a tool that's in Treasury Board. Another department, such as Works and Transportation, actually has to apply to Treasury Board for this market adjustment. Then they will determine whether it gets approved or not. So this is not something that's even negotiated, not something that the unions, whether it be NAPE or other unions, sit at the table and the discussions. Like a department makes an application to Treasury Board for what they will see as a justifiable reason, and it's just that market adjustment, like competitive. So that's what done in this case, and it has caused a significant division in the MOS bargaining unit. Like you said, people working elbow to elbow, where one occupation is getting a double market adjustment, some are getting a singular market adjustment, and others have not been recognized at all. I think even the minister, in fairness, have said it's the tool they have now that they use, but unfortunately, we have said for a long time, Linda, this is an outdated tool. If we know people are not properly compensated, we can't be doing one-offs, and it causes this division. And I think Linda will have a reverse effect where people basically say, if you're not going to value my work, then I'm going to go find work elsewhere.
So how does it get addressed, particularly as you head into collective bargaining, let's say, for instance?
I think what has been done there, and this is not the only market adjustment. I think right now, Linda, and I can be correct on this, there's 70-plus occupations in the public service Newfoundland and Labrador that receive some form of market adjustment. I'll be upfront, there's some in healthcare, for example, that have been receiving a market adjustment for decades. If a department, whether the Department of Health or Works of Transportation or any other department, have not figured out now there is a problem with the compensation system. If somebody's been getting a market adjustment, Linda, I'll give it, like say in healthcare, I know there's one there that's been getting a market adjustment for several decades. If somebody hasn't figured out by now, decades later, that occupation is not properly compensated, then we have a major problem in the compensation system. Because really, what a market adjustment is, Linda, for any of your listeners that wouldn't understand, this got to be applied for on an annual basis. So today, going back to the ATTs and the heavy equipment operators, they are getting it now, but next year, Minister Petten's department will have to apply to Treasury Board again, and Treasury Board at that point in time may say, no, we don't approve it this year. So people that they recruited based on a certain level of compensation now are also all of a sudden going to lose this market adjustment, so likely they would up and leave and go to a more competitive environment. So, and the other thing, it's not pensionable. So again, we've said it's an outdated tool, it's a poor tool, so that's something we'll be talking about bargaining. What can we do differently? If we're acknowledging just compensation inequity and there's compensation problems, which there clearly is, because even governments are admitting that by implementing market adjustments, there are occupations or bargains that are not properly compensated. What needs to be done to address that in a more progressive manner and one that meets the current environment? So that's something that must be addressed, because in this bargaining, I can tell you it's causing, unfortunately, and I've said to some of these frontline workers, let's not pit worker against worker, because it's not the worker's decision. This is a decision of government departments. So respect each other in a workplace. And then try to address. So I can understand the frustration of these workers, and this is the first that's been experienced in this bargaining unit, but it also exists in other bargaining units in some cases for many, many years.
Tough, though. I mean, it's one thing to say, let's not pit people against each other, but, those kinds of, when you're looking at your paycheck at the end of the day, knowing that your buddy over there, over across the way, I'm looking at him now, he's making, $20,000, $30,000 more than me. It's got to be galling. And as the caller indicated yesterday, there's people willing to walk.
Yeah, people are pretty upset over this, and rightfully so, because initially, last year, or over a year ago now, initially was just the heavy equipment technicians that got a market adjustment. Nobody else got it. Then they done a second market adjustment, again for heavy equipment technicians, and then that was followed then by the heavy equipment operators, and like I said, leaving out a number of traders, not a massive bargaining unit, but then actually no type of adjustment or recognition. For example, use a welder, no recognition for those individuals whatsoever. So yes, it pits one worker against another, but all we've said to workers, don't point your finger at that worker. It is a policy of government or government departments that have these policies that are causing this inequity. That's where the frustration has to be focused, and the decision makers here have to look at this and what can we come up with in 2026 that doesn't pit worker against worker and addresses the inequity. Because again, just in the metro region, for example, we know there's an inequity between the municipalities, the city of St. John's, and work, service, and transportation. Foxtrot Depot, which is not far from here, or the Donovans or White Hills, for example, we know there's people there paid less than in the city of St. John's, the city of Mount Pearl, and the town of Paradise, right where I live. So that's the things they got to look at, the inequities that exist in the current pay system, and it can't be looked at on a one-off basis or an annual basis. It needs to be addressed and addressed proactively.
Skilled workers, of course, are always in high demand, especially nowadays. And obviously, it sounds like salaries and compensation in the public sector is not keeping up with the market. It used to be the opposite way around. What's happened?
Absolutely, Linda. And again, it comes down to what I call a job evaluation system. Again, was only implemented back a little over a decade ago, but there's been all kinds of problems with this job evaluation system in a number of areas amongst our health professionals, work amongst our core government employees, among healthcare workers, and now in this case being highlighted in MOS. A lot of people never put the value on the trades that exist, and trades workers in many instances is what keeps our infrastructure, especially the aging infrastructure that we have in Newfoundland and Labrador, operational and standing, even going to our healthcare sector. Most people don't realize the trades workers in these areas, the value they bring. They're the ones that maintain the building, make sure the building's operational. Like a hospital like St. Clair's, for example, quite dated, no different than HMP, quite dated. If it wasn't for the trades workers, these facilities just would not be operational. So this has to be addressed. We know there's a problem. I've always said, in order to fix something, you have to acknowledge there's a problem. We have said for some time, Linda, there's a problem with the market adjustment policy. There's a problem with the inequity in compensation in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I've actually even heard a couple of the current ministers, especially Minister Petton, say they recognize it's a compensation issue. So if the union is saying, the employees front line are saying, and their employer is saying, what I'm saying now, let's fix it. Because if we're acknowledging there's a problem, let's fix it. It's when someone doesn't acknowledge there's a problem or pretends there isn't one, it won't get addressed. We know there is one. So let's figure out a way to fix this so it doesn't continue to repeat itself and doesn't continue the division that exists now in this department, which is work, service, transportation, or our bargaining, which we call maintenance operation services, or in short, MOS.
Nate, President Jerry Earl, I do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Alrighty. Bye-bye. Your thoughts on what he's had to say, by all means, give us a call.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
And we are going now to the opposition critic for Energy and Mines, Mr. Fred Hutton. Hello.
Good morning, Linda. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. You folks made it in okay? With
oh,
all
yeah.
The snow on the go?
We got chauffeured in, so that was great.
I remember it well. So, look, I wanted to call in this morning, Linda, to talk a little bit about the response that Premier Wakeham gave yesterday to the hiring of Dr. Whalen as a political advisor in the Premier's office. And I understand how this works because I worked there as a political advisor to former Premier Fury. And, you are paid. The Premier gets a budget. And in this case, it's $1.8 million to hire staff for that office, staff who provide political advice. And to have the argument that the Premier is trying to assert that he is giving medical advice, that Dr. Whelan is giving medical advice, but yet his salary is coming from MCP, it just does not make sense, and it's wrong. No other doctor is being paid in the same way to give political advice. And the Premier gave the example of Dr. Greg Brown, a vascular surgeon who was hired when we announced that there was going to be a new hospital built to provide advice on what equipment, what the hospital should look like, how it should work. And he was paid through the public service. He was paid as an executive. There was an announcement done on it through the public service network, which means that everybody in government would have gotten word that Dr. Brown had been hired to do that. The Premier tried to say he was secretly hired. It was not. 20,000 people got the email to say that Greg Brown was going to work there, and he was going to provide advice to the Premier and to the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure on what that hospital should look like from people who work there. And work in the system. The Premier said in a report that I saw on one of your competing media stations yesterday that, he's said repeatedly that if you want to fix healthcare, go talk to the people who work in it. Well, that's what we did with Dr. Greg Brown, to bring him in to say, okay, you work in a hospital all the time. What do you need in there in order to make this work? And, ironically, NAPE posted yesterday that they found it insulting that they have offered their frontline staff who work in healthcare to provide advice to them, and nothing has come of that, in terms of what they want, how they want to proceed. So to say that, what Des Whelan, nobody is calling into question his credentials as a medical physician, as a family doctor, as an emergency room doctor. The issue here is the process, and the Premier trying to justify paying him from MCP, money that is supposed to be for health care for people in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, I've heard my colleague and others talking about this yesterday, how oftentimes we get calls from constituents who say that there is no money for them to get something done, some procedure they need. They don't have the money to do it. MCP won't cover it. Yet we have $275,000 to pay somebody for 28 hours a week who is, and make no mistake, providing political advice to Premier Wakeham. He is known to have ties to the party, and if the Premier wants to hire him and put him in the office and take his 195 or whatever the cap is on salaries from the Premier's budget and pay Dr. Whelan that amount, he is within his right to do it. But to try to justify that he's getting this advice from money that is coming, political advice from MCP, is wrong. He should not have done this, and now he's trying, the headline today on one of the networks was he's doubling down on the hiring of this and that the money should come from there. Let's use Dr. Fitzgerald as an example, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, who is paid $5,000 a year more than Dr. Whelan, working full-time, got us through the pandemic, and offers no political advice, nothing. We met with her many, many times throughout the pandemic. Never once did she offer political advice. Dr. Brown was hired as a bureaucrat, and they're supposed to be nonpartisan. So was Dr. Fitzgerald. Dr. Whelan is in a completely different boat. He's offering political advice, and I wonder what other advice is he giving Premier Wakeham in terms of how they can proceed with fishery files or with transportation and infrastructure files or whatever file. This is not just specifically to work on health, and the budget the money is coming from the wrong place. Hiring him is not the issue. Where the money is coming from is.
Now, the Premier made an interesting observation yesterday that he shared with VOCM News, and we're running a story on it today. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but Premier Wakeham told VOCM News that there is an office and administrative supports that are being afforded to former Premier Andrew Furey after he left the Premier's office. And that was a perk that had been dropped but brought back. And he says that they've discovered that the former Liberal government reinstated a policy which was eliminated by Dwight Ball in 2016, whereby outgoing premiers get an office and administrative support for a period of 3 years. So I was wondering if you were aware of that and what's behind that.
Well, I'm aware of it now, and look, when you leave the office, when I left this week alone, when I left transportation and infrastructure, I'm still getting requests from ATIP. I was down in the ATIP office a couple of days ago. I can only imagine what it's like for the Premier trying to wrap up all those files. And anything else, not just ATIP, but any other information that you may have done over a 5-year period. So, and when you get into that role in the Premier's office, there are things that you need to have help with. You cannot do this alone, which is why there is this political budget of $1.8 million. To have your staff around you who are advising you, not just the clerical folks who work there, and the administrative folks and the office managers and your chief of staff and your deputy chief of staff, but you need a large team of people around you, which is why that number is so high. There are hundreds and hundreds of requests on a daily basis, and this stuff can carry over for a year or two or maybe even longer after you leave office. It's not uncommon. They're trying to deflect to show that something else happened here to take your attention away from what is actually happening here, which is they hired a doctor to give political advice, and they're paying him from MCP. And they're trying to justify it. And it's wrong.
And so why MCP? I don't think that answer has been provided.
Well, my understanding is that Dr. Whalen billed $300,000 to MCP last year, and I'm assuming that because within accordance with the NLMA contract and how much people get paid for certain services, this is what it would be. And by the way, Dr. Whalen can still bill MCP now separately as he works as a physician, which is great. But for somebody to be paid $275,000 as a political appointee to give political advice, partisan advice, part of the job of a political advisor is to advise somebody on how you will get reelected, right? That's part of it. So is that what Dr. Whalen is doing for Premier Wakeham to make medical decisions based on that? I don't know. That's why that money is separate from, and okay, it's all tax money. People would argue that, but it's against hiring a political staff person. And he's paying that salary, that $275,000 for 28 hours a week out of MCP. Yes, there are positions over there where physicians work at MCP, and they craft their policies and they figure out things, but they're not providing political advice to the Premier.
Is there a concern that this is setting a precedent here?
Well, they've done it already. They fired Pat Parfrey with 45 years' experience in medical care. They want to talk to somebody who knows about the system. Talk to Pat Parfrey. And they replaced him with somebody who'd already worked in the system, Ron Johnson. Fair enough. And there's succession within organizations like that. But then they take Ross Wiseman, the former health minister, and put him in as the head of the board of trustees. So if they're politicizing healthcare in this case, and they are paying somebody $275,000 for 28 hours a week from MCP, money that is supposed to be for health services for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It's wrong.
Fred Hutton, we'll see what others have to say about this. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it, Linda. All the best to you and your listeners.
All right. Same to you.
Bye-bye.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we want to hear from you. And we're back. We're going now to Debbie. You're on the air. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Linda. I have a problem. I don't know if you could help me.
All right. I'll try.
Okay. In 2004, May long weekend, I was drugged and raped in Port Blandford.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so I went to the RCMP in Clarenville. They took a DNA sample of me because, of course, they never had one, and not for any reason, and they videotaped me. So that was all right. That was 2 different times I went there, right? That was all right. I've been trying ever since. Like, they called me. She called me back 3 months later and said that she knew, the results came back, but it was a female that I want to know. Now, I have nothing to get, like, they're 100% accepted. I think just as much of them as anybody else. But 22 years ago, I wasn't sure. So I said no and hung up. So I've been trying ever since to get answers. I phoned the RCMP. Am I allowed to give names?
I prefer if you don't, just because of the nature of this.
So I was talking to the RCMP for years now about I guess 6-8 months after she had the results, it was eating at me, so I wanted to know who it was. So I've been contacting the RCMP, RNC for the past, oh my gosh, Linda, 15, 16 years to find answers, right?
So this is this is the person who contributed that DNA during that criminal act. Is that what you're saying?
The RCMP officer brought me to Clarendon Hospital, and we did the
rape kit.
She got. Well, no, because it was too late for that. But she did the DNA.
Oh, okay.
I mean, she took it. Well, I don't know if I should be so.
No, that's all right. Don't go into the finer details if you don't mind.
Okay, she did something that took my DNA. When she called me back, she told me that she had, like I said, had the results. So that was all right. The RCMP was sending me to the RNC. RNC was sending me to the RCMP. And at the time, Linda, there was belly knocker marks on my bum. So what, in my opinion now, only in my opinion, it had to be an RCMP officer or an RNC officer. Because why am I not getting answers? There's videotape. There's DNA. Why am I getting answers? I've been trying,
So you're trying to find out who contributed that DNA that they collected?
Yeah.
Okay, and why can't you get that answer?
I don't know. I'm about 15, 16, 17 years.
And is the case closed or...
No, they won't give me answers. The RCMP sent me to the RNC, the RCMP sent me to the RNC, the RNC sent me to the RCMP.
Okay, well, who's investigating it? If it took place in Port Blandford, it wouldn't be RNC, it would be RCMP, would it not?
It would be RCMP, but now it's like we're so long, they're saying RNC. I don't know. But, do you know anybody that I could get that's high up with the RCMP that would speak to me so I could get answers?
I would suggest that you try either with some type of advocacy group or try the legal route with a lawyer. There's a couple of...
I can't afford a lawyer.
Okay, well, there's a couple of advocacy groups that deal with people who have survived sexual violence. Do you have a phone number?
My own phone number.
No, do you have do you have a pen to take a phone number?
I phoned it. I was in touch with the Journey Project about 5 months ago.
Okay.
They got me a taxi there. They were really nice. Got me a taxi there. Didn't have to. Got me a taxi home. But when it came to the point that they were going to let me talk to a lawyer for 3 hours, sorry, I never heard back from them. I kept calling them, nothing.
Okay, so did they hook you up with a lawyer then? No.
No.
Okay, well, I would follow up with them for starters because they've got that process started on you. Have you tried End Sexual Violence?
No.
That's another group that you could try.
Okay, well, if I can't get past the RNC or the RCMP, how are they going to help me? They're not going to give them answers either.
No, but if you try through the Journey Project, this is what they do. They help you navigate the system, and if they had lined up a lawyer for you to speak to, you should try to follow up with them on that.
Okay, because they wouldn't answer the phone after they wouldn't return my calls. Which is another thing that, everything is blocking finding out. It should be simple for the RCMP. I was videotaped. The results are back. I don't see why they can't tell me.
And I can't speculate as to why you're not getting the answers that you're seeking. I have no way of knowing. But if I were you, I would follow up with the Journey Project to see where your case or the status of your inquiry lies.
Okay, so there's nobody in the RCMP that you can give me a name of that could look this up for me.
I wouldn't know where to start.
Okay. Well, I started 100 times. I got nowhere.
But the Journey Project would be able to help you navigate. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you navigate the system.
Okay, I'll try him again.
Dave says he's willing to talk to you off the air if with some suggestions. All right.
That'll be perfect.
I'll put you back on hold. All right. And we'll put Debbie back on hold so Dave can have a chat with her. And if you've encountered, a sexual assault or sexual violence, some numbers to think about calling would be the Journey Project, and we have a number for them. It's 1-833-722-2805. And End Sexual Violence provides a 24-hour support line and information line at 1-800-726-2743. Well, that's it for us for VOCM Open Line today. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Really interesting program today. If there's anything that you've heard that you want to weigh in on, give us a call early tomorrow. We'll get you on to have a chat. We're up to news time now with Zach Power. Thanks for listening.